Hello, namaste, good morning, good afternoon, or maybe even good evening in whichever part of the world you are joining us from. My name is Deepak Khemani and I welcome you to Bloom. Bloom is the brainchild of Miss Payal Irani. Bloom is a flower that has blossomed and is spreading its fragrance across the globe. At Bloom, we are into physical and mental wellness, trainings, and speaking engagements, along with creating signature workshops for corporates and individuals wanting to go to the next level. Bloom has a powerful and a dynamic team that has been handpicked. They are the who's who in their respective domains and are industry veterans, having an accumulated 200 plus years of experience in their own field. At Bloom, we strongly believe in co-creation, collaboration, and teamwork. I invite each and every one of you to be a part of Bloom, where together we grow, and as Bloom blossoms, it creates ripples the world over. Let me introduce my co-host, Mr. K.V. Premraj. Premraj is a futurist. He speaks on leadership, management, and employee engagement. He's the co-author of four best-selling books, four best-selling books. The fourth one was released just a month back. He spent 37 years in the banking and financial services space with experience both in public and private sector banks. On our show, we have a dynamic personality today. I request Prem Raj to introduce her and take the session ahead. Over to you, Prem Raj.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you for that very flattering introduction. Yes, we have on the show a very dynamic person in squadron leader Delshad Master, who is an Indian Air Force veteran, having served as an officer for a decade. Through a stint with the Indian Air Force, she played various roles and served in numerous forward fighter bases in the North, West, and Northeast. In her second innings, she's found a calling in championing the cause for the LGBTQ plus community. A strong and ardent ally of the LGBTQIA community, she used to be the chief editor of the digital magazine 50 Shades of Gay, and now works towards transforming minds through diversity and inclusion and gender and sexuality training. As a queer sensitization catalyst, she writes, speaks, and trains on diversity, equity, and inclusion with special focus on the queer community. Towards this, she has earned certifications from the University of Colorado, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, and the Stanford School of Medicine. She is currently working towards a diploma in counseling and simultaneously penning her two books, one for parents titled Help My Kids Cure, and another for India Inc. titled Cure Queries. Welcome to the show, Delshad.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for having me here. Thank you, Mr. Deepak. Thank you, Mr. Premraj, and thank you, Payal. Thanks a lot for having me.
So let's start this conversation. Coming from an Indian Air Force background, how come you got associated with the cause for the LGBTQ fraternity?
Right. So to begin with, let me say that this was never on the cards. This was never something that I had in mind and I moved towards, unlike my Air Force career. So life in the armed forces was something that I strove for, I aimed for, and I finally achieved. But when I came out of the Air Force, I began to work on my strengths, which was largely writing and training. That's how I landed a job with a digital marketing agency in Bangalore. One of their verticals was a not-for-profit magazine for the LGBTQ community, which is what you mentioned in the intro. Shades of Gay was their magazine, which I had the honor and privilege of being the editor for. So I used to write for it. And as part of that, I got introduced to a lot of people from the community, allies, parents of LGBTQ people, parents who had lost children, parents who were in pain or in denial initially, but had now accepted their children. So my entire eyes sort of opened up, the mind opened up, and that's when I got to realize the pain points of this community. And I realized that there is no voice from the outside to speak for this community. Many people from the community are definitely activists and doing a lot for the community, but very few people on the outside really understand their pain points or where they're coming from and speak for them, not being from the community. That's when I decided to take up the cause and be a voice for them. Uh,
Interesting, interesting.
right.
So what exactly is diversity and inclusion? Why does it matter so much as a strategic priority for sustainable development? It would be nice if you could explain this with some anecdotes from your personal experiences.
Sure. Let me quote Gandhi. We are approaching our Independence Day, and I think the moment would be right. The moment is always right to quote the father of the nation. He said that any country's progress is judged by the way it treats its women, children, and animals. Now, if I stretch that quote a little bit, I would go on to say not just women and children, but how a country treats all its citizens, be they of any color, any caste, any creed, any religion, any gender, and any sexuality. And similarly, not just women, children, and animals, but if you stretch the word animals, it could include flora, fauna, your environment, your biodiversity, your natural resources, all of it. You cannot have lopsided physical growth alone. A country cannot rise in its GDP and ignore its human rights, ignore its the condition of its women or children, or for that matter even the environment. All of it goes hand in hand towards sustainable development. You may grow, but you may not be sustainable, and you may not in the true sense be developed if you haven't taken all these factors along. And that is why diversity and inclusion, although I understand it's very low down on the priority list, but it is a contributor towards it is a strategic priority towards development in the overall picture. Now, if I may, just quote an example, let's look at the Middle East. There are a lot of countries in the Middle East which by far are very developed if you look at them fiscally in terms of, their GDPs, in terms of their growth index, very, very, very high over there. But when it comes to their human rights index, in fact, they just bring up the rear. They are, among 162 countries, they are 150 and below. That's their human rights index. So that is absolutely lopsided development. Not something that they don't even consider women as equal citizens in certain countries, and that just speaks of the state of development in that country. So while in terms of money and resources and GDP, it may be high up, but if you do not ultimately benefit your citizens, then what are you good for? If you don't take along everybody, then you're absolutely no good. And therefore, luckily, fortunately for us, India is quite high on that index. Not as compared to many other developed Western and European nations, but way beyond quite a few other nations. And our ethos talks of unity in diversity. So for us, it's not a new concept. For us, it's not something that needs to be brought in now or spoken about. We already believe in it so firmly. All we need to do is include a few others who are at the periphery into the circle of unity in diversity. So we talk a lot of unity in terms of language, in terms of regions, cuisines, cultures, all of that. But a few factors get left out, and gender and sexuality is also one of those factors, which are on the fringes. They are never taken as part of that diversity. We need to include those. In a country like India, unfortunately, even skin color is a factor. While we shout hoarse about Black Lives Matter, but then all you need to do is open the matrimonial page and you can you can see the Black lives really don't matter when it comes to our own matrimonial columns. Everybody's looking for a fair convent educated girl and all of that. So a lot of it we already have, but a lot of it we don't even realize that we discriminate. We don't even realize that we are not even taking along. And gender and sexuality is a big part of all of this. It has to go hand in hand for sustainable development.
Thank you. That was beautifully explained. Now we have more clarity and as to how it is. And it is nice to know in that index, India ranks quite high in the picking
Yes.
order.
Yes, it does.
That feels nice, though we have a lot to do.
We do.
Now that we've explained about this, how should business encourage diversity and social inclusion to move towards sustainability?
So to begin, there are very many ways to do that, but you have to make a start at the very top. And how that comes about is when a company makes a public announcement, a public pledge that we are an equal opportunities provider, or we believe in diversity and inclusion. So the very, very, very first step is to be conscious of this and make it public, make it a public announcement that we are this is what we stand for, these are our values and belief system. Having made that announcement, it then has to reflect and trickle down into everything that the company does. So whether it is recruitments, whether it is training, whether it is internal and external communication, whether it is their branding, their advertising, their marketing, all of that has to go hand in hand with the pledge that they have made and they have committed. May I also add that being an equal opportunities provider or being an inclusive company, it's not the buck doesn't stop there. It is a continuous ongoing journey. And as part of that journey, if you wish, I can explain the process a little in detail. The first thing that a company needs to do after this particular announcement is to do an independent, unbiased audit. So you have to begin with forming committees that carry out this audit in different areas of responsibility. So it could be whether it's your workers, whether it's the processes that you have, everything. Does it include everyone? Does it take everyone along? These committees also need to be formed across hierarchies. It cannot be only top management. It cannot be only middle management. It has to be across hierarchies. They have to be assured of complete confidentiality, complete privacy in letting out whatever they think they want to speak. Once that audit is carried out, the results will speak for themselves. You will know what you are already doing and what you are good at. You will have some areas which maybe on paper you have declared but are not taking effect in actuality. And then there will be some areas which you've completely ignored or you've not even taken into consideration. The report will give you all of that. Now, break down this report into what can be achieved in the short term, the medium term, and the long term. And once again, make subcommittees to monitor the progress of these things. Goes without saying, these committees also have to be diverse in their constitution. In fact, you can also take in external stakeholders like your vendors and your suppliers. They also form in the larger picture a part of the company. And to some extent, even your what are your customers saying, they are also your stakeholders. In fact, they are a very critical part of your stakeholders. Now, just to give you an example of how a company can show its intent publicly, one of the things that mobile companies, when they had come in initially, all you could do is, a person who was visually challenged or who was deaf mute could not really operate a mobile. Right? I mean, a deaf mute person could, but a visually challenged could not. Today, if you look at the mobiles, not only can a visually challenged person operate the mobile. Even a person with visual difficulties can operate a mobile phone. A person with reading difficulties, they have something called a contrast ratio in terms of color. So even a person with reading difficulties is included. A deaf mute person also feels included. Either they will change the interface, or they will have, for the visually challenged, they have verbal cues. For the deaf mute, there are other ways and means of how they can listen in to what is being said. You will have your bylines or captions, all of that captioning. All these small little acts go in to show that if I have the phone of a particular company, I feel included. And I may not necessarily need it. Like I may not have any such disability, but I would feel very proud to own a phone like that, because I know that this company includes even this marginalized section of society. And therefore you may be impacting a very, very small segment of your target audience by making an inclusive phone, by looking into these factors. But the vast majority is proud of owning that, and that affects your bottom line. Most companies look at it as, why should I make a change for just like what, 0.2% of my customer base? How does it affect my bottom line? Hardly does. But what they forget is that 99.8% is watching whether you are inclusive for the 0.2% or not. And that's how a company actually benefits by being more diverse and inclusive through this entire process.
Thank you for explaining that. And let's hope the corporates are listening to you, or listen to what you said about having a committee and audit about this and take corrective measures. This might happen in top corporates, but then we still have a long way to go in mid-size and the lower rungs of the corporate ladder.
Absolutely.
Now let's move from the corporates. How do you think we can raise awareness and incorporate inclusive behavior that fosters diversity and inclusion among the general public, especially in the interiors of the country?
Okay. I would start by saying, now, unfortunately, Indian society, it reels under the burden of imperialism, and thought processes are largely shaped by the laws, education, and the government, unfortunately, of the Raj even today. To give you an example, Section 377 was introduced way back in the 1860s. And we lived with that for almost 160 years across generations, and therefore came to believe that this was our culture, and anything against against the order of nature was not a part of our culture, and was inappropriate or criminal also. And we did not care that it trampled upon the basic human rights of so many of our citizens. We did not care for it. So if we really want to be inclusive as a society, especially in in the rural sector, we need to start by looking at our education system. We need to start seeing whether are we still teaching our children something that is a leftover of the imperialist regime that we were under, or is it our own independent thought? And I need not emphasize enough how beautiful our education system used to be, how much of our culture, how much of the world used to come to us to study. The world was filled with people coming from Cambodia, Vietnam, you name a place, and people came from there to study at Nalanda. So our education system was beyond par. When people were still when there were other countries not with basic civilities, we were already well established universities. So if we really want to reach out to the last man in the villages, one, change the education system drastically, like not make a few changes here and there, but drastic change to the education system. Another aspect I feel, and India is moving in that direction, is information technology. So information technology is going to be your game changer, and it already is. But IT has to be a result of a lot of infrastructure. So for IT to be the end result, reaching the last man in the village, you need to have the base of infrastructure. So that is another aspect which we need to look at if we genuinely want diversity and inclusion to reach that far. And why I say this is because IT is an equalizer. It's going to equitably distribute all our resources to the last man in the village. It's not equal distribution, but equitable distribution, right? So once that happens, the person sitting in the village also receives equal opportunities. For that, you need to ensure the right infrastructure and the right education system. If both these two are taken care of, equal opportunities across the board will ensure diverse intake of people coming into, whether it's government jobs, whether it's corporate jobs, be it opportunities to study abroad, whatever it is. All of this will begin either by changing the education system and by changing your infrastructure in the villages. That together will make diversity and inclusion accessible to all.
Let's hope it happens. Yeah, you briefly mentioned about the scrapping of Section 377.
Yes.
If my memory serves me right, it was 6th of September 2019 that it was scrapped. Am I right?
18.
Yeah.
18.
So,
yes.
So it's almost now 2 years since that has been scrapped. Have you, in your work, have you really seen much change has happened due to the scrapping of this?
Yes, I have seen a lot of change. Let me explain. A change has come across in the way we now talk about the subject, right? I wouldn't say a change has come across in mindsets. Like we were talking about a little earlier, it cannot happen that till yesterday our country was reeling under Section 377 and considering a criminal activity, and next day morning you wake up and you go and hug every transgender you come across, or you accept your gay son or your lesbian daughter. It's not that immediate. So the mental change has a long way to go. However, the fact that Section 377 was scrapped, one, India announced to the world that we believe in human rights. India announced to the world that we are no more regressive. We no more choose to follow what was laid down upon us by the British. We are going to think about every citizen of ours. We are evolving into a real democracy in letter and spirit. So that's one thing that happened. The other thing that happened is because of the scrapping of this, the corporate world woke up. India Inc. woke up to the fact that now it was okay. It was very acceptable to talk about, a rainbow economy, being diverse, being an equal opportunities employer. You could talk about hiring, transgenders, anything and everything that was related and associated with Section 377 suddenly was out in the open. People were talking about it. People were talking about their sexualities openly. People were expressing their gender identity very openly. So all of that has definitely benefited the country. Until now, all these conversations were, in shrouds and spoken about in hush tones, or only in gatherings like these, where you were assured a very, dignified audience. You never, a gay man would still feel afraid to walk down on the road, because in case he was molested, he would be afraid to even go to the police. Today, that may not be the case. I do understand that he could still be bullied. I accept the fact that, like I said, we are not there yet. He could still be molested, but at least he would have the confidence to go to the police, because now the law is on his side. So the law being on a person's side gives a lot of impetus, gives a lot of courage to face other challenges. Earlier, because the law was not on your side, anybody and everybody could bully you. So now with that scrapped, I think it's really opened up doors for a lot of people. Corporate India is contributing to this cause in a very big way, and it's changing mindsets, be it through advertising, be it through social messaging. All these are somewhere or the other down the line impacting people, and that's a very good thing. That's a very good thing that's happened. Yeah.
Nice to know about this progress that has happened in the last 2 years.
Yes.
Now, can we discuss something about what initiatives can be taken in order to communicate about accessibility, equal opportunities, and non-discrimination of a more diverse society?
Okay. I would say we radically need to change our entire communication. So when you want to show a society that you are more diverse, you need to communicate that message. You saying that you are inclusive or you're diverse will not come through without you communicating it. And be it a person or be it a corporate, social media is the place today. That's where uh, people get to know you as a person. I mean, I know of instances where, before meeting me or before even having a conversation with me, a person would come up and say, oh, I saw you on LinkedIn, or I've seen your FB account or your Insta account or whatever, which means that they would rather, instead of getting to know me personally, they would see my profile and make a judgment as to who I am or what I am. Now, the same applies to companies. Earlier, I spoke about mobiles. There are many, many more companies, many more examples which I can give you, where your entire communication will decide the tone that you are received in, right? How you communicate out to the world will tell the world how to view you and how to receive you, irrespective of whether I ever purchase a product from the company or not, irrespective of whether I ever need their services or not. Now, like I said, announcing to the world that you're an equal opportunities employer or equal opportunities provider, and then communicating that. I'll give you one example, which comes to mind very instantly. A few years back, now Tata's has never needed to really do that, right? Tata's, as we know, has always been into CSR was not something new to Tata's. They've been into it before 2013, before the Companies Act changed. Way back in the 90s, Tata had an ad campaign for Tata Steel saying, we also make steel, right? They said, we also make steel, whereas that's their primary job. They make steel. That is their raison d'etre. But they said, we also make steel. And the complete ad spoke about all the other initiatives that the Tatas took, whether it's setting up a medical center, whether it's promoting athletes, whether it's promoting women into their workforce. The entire ad was that, and the caption said, we also make steel. Now, I am not a person who would go and buy steel per se, right? But look at the impact it has left on my mind. I still remember that ad. So, and that's the way we view a Tata company. So everybody who speaks of a Tata company does not speak of just profits and bottom line, but they speak of the human factor, right? Similarly, I just mentioned a while earlier, you may be impacting a very small segment, but by putting that segment in your main advertisements, okay, you are promoting a very different picture, and you are also subconsciously changing minds. I need not emphasize the power of advertising and marketing to subconsciously change minds. I'll give you another example. Royal Enfield is coming up with bikes, with a new range of bikes. This bike is called Meteor, and it's largely meant for female riders. Okay, now it will not, if it sells it as a female bike or a bike for females, there'll hardly be any sales. And Royal Enfield would not really be able to call it a hit product. So what they have done is subtly introduced female riders in all their advertising and marketing campaigns. So without saying that this is a bike specifically for females, if you see its features, and I don't mean just calling it a bike for females, they have actually modified certain features to be more comfortable for female riders. They've actually gone that extra step. In their advertising, they are showing females, right? So while it is a bike for others, it's also a bike for females, and it's promoting now whether another woman rides that bike or not. She has the subliminal message tomorrow is, it's okay if my daughter rides a bike. It's fine if it's a message to the man as well, that it's okay if your wife rides a bike, or your daughter or your sister rides a bike. So a lot of messaging by the corporates can go a long way and subliminally change the way we think and make our society more inclusive. Recently, if you might have seen, there was a jewelry ad. I don't want to name the jeweler, but of a trans woman, sorry, a trans woman, a man transitioning to a woman, being encouraged, accepted, and loved by her family, and being showered with jewelry. So, being a jewelry ad, of course, there was a lot of show of jewelry, but the message underlying, they could have made the very same ad showcasing the very same jewelry with a female model, but they chose a trans woman. And that goes to say, without saying it, without the company saying that we believe in diversity and inclusion, the message is very clear. We believe in encouraging all genders. Anybody could wear our jewelry and we are okay with it, right? So if a trans woman probably walks into the jewelry showroom next time, she's assured of a decent behavior from from the person on the other side of the counter. The company has given a beautiful message there, and it will change. It will probably go ahead and change minds, and so many such examples. But yeah, so the idea is that radically change your communication, to uh, include your philosophy, include your belief, and put it in the minds of your customers, your consumers, or all your stakeholders for that matter.
Beautiful examples of Tata's, Royal Enfield, and the jewelry company that I spoke about. Tata's, we don't need to be told, but it's nice to know Tata's in the philanthropy race. They are the best in the world. They have been doing it for the last 150 years. Something that we can be proud of. You mentioned about bullying when you spoke. Yes. So how is it that we can promote openness to tackle microaggressions in terms of bullying and harassment?
Right. For bullying and harassment, no matter how many laws you have, no matter how many, everything on paper is just that. It is on paper unless implemented, right? And implementation post the act has very little value. Seeing a person getting punished for something wrong that he has done, and especially in our country, it happens a little too late. By then, all the sympathy is with this man, because everybody ends up saying, oh, that was one little thing he did when he was a young boy, way back 10, 15 years back. Why punish him today for that and all that? So all these things, all these laws can only help you so much. The solution against all these acts of aggression is simply education, education, and education. Nothing beyond that. The act of introducing gender and sexuality studies from a very, very young age is the only thing which will go on and inculcate tolerance, acceptance, and genuine love and empathy for the other person. Once it is inculcated at a very young age, it's very difficult to alter going forward, and then if generation after generation grows up learning this, then obviously you're moving towards a more inclusive society. The perpetrators now are in the minority. They know that it will not be tolerated by the vast majority. Today, the perpetrators get away with these microaggressions simply because they believe कि कौन क्या कर लेगा, ठीक है, and who's going to, I could probably bully the guy who takes the side of this person I'm bullying as well, right? Because the person who is fighting for the victim is also in the minority and the others are in a majority. The only way to change it from its roots is by education, and we have to introduce it at a very, very young age. It has to be across the board, not just in your international IB schools, but in every board, in everything. It is something akin to moral values. You have moral sciences being taught in schools right from a very young age. It is akin to that. If it is taught right from that stage, we will grow up, the entire generation grows up being more inclusive. In fact, they don't even have to be told that they are being taught this in order to be inclusive or tolerant. Once you teach them the facts, once you teach them to love their friend irrespective of who he, she, or they are going to grow up into being a very, very different generation from the rest of us. They are going to be the ones who will stand up for such things when they see it, stand up and fight for such things. Our generation, in fact, is not very well equipped. Even that can be changed. Again, solution lies in education. So education across the board, whether it's educating the corporates, it's educating the children, or it's educating even the government agencies for that matter. If today a trans woman goes and complains of rape in a police station, The police station itself is not equipped to deal with it. A trans woman going to a government medical facility, the doctor or the nurse, their staff there do not know how to treat her or how to uh, go about treating her in a humane manner. So education is the solution. Education will scrap all these microaggressions and bullying for good in the long run.
Yeah, resonate with you. Education is what is needed so that people are aware of it. And then when they grow up, they will be able to stand up for it or support it. Thank you for your thoughts. My last question to you before I hand it over to my co-host Deepak. For your support to this community, have you faced any personal challenges? And I say this because we have a lot of crackpots in our system who does not want to change and who feel that anyone doing this needs to be targeted.
So to be very honest, not yet. I haven't. But having said that, let me also tell you that I'm not very, very active on social media the way I would want to be. It's set to change going forward. I am going to change all that, going to be more active consciously on social media. And I am expecting a backlash. There is a backlash. Happens a lot of times, but from what I have seen these days is, one negative comment is bombarded with so many supporters that the negative comment gets it sort of gets hidden away, or gets written off. So I am hoping for that kind of support, and I know for sure that I'll get it. But any time that you try to effect a change, there will be people who think otherwise. There will be people who stand up and say that all that is nonsense, it's not needed, why make a big show of it? So there will be detractors. I am ready for it. Till date, I haven't faced many, and there haven't been many personal challenges. But going forward, it's part of any sort of change. Any change you bring about, there is resistance to change. And my cause would be no different, I'm sure. But I'm ready for it, whatever comes my way.
Salute your courage.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Now I request Deepak to take it forward.
Thank you, Premraj. Yeah, thank you. And this has been an interesting 35-40 minutes of discussion which has been going on. And I would like to ask Delshad this question. A lot of people, when they are fighting against the system, when they want laws to change, when they want their rights, they become activists. And an activist is somebody who says, it is my way or the highway. You listen to me, do what I say, otherwise I will do this.
Right.
You don't call yourself an activist. You are saying, I am somebody who sensitizes people. Yes. First of all, tell us, why aren't you an activist? Why did you choose to become someone who sensitizes people?
So an activist normally has a very definite cause in mind. This is what I want to get at. Like, for example, if I'm trying to stop mining in a particular area, that's my cause. That's my reason for fighting, and therefore I fight the system, and I fight the law, and I fight the government just so that to stop mining. Therefore, it's like my way or the highway. When it comes to me, what I have come to realize is this kind of change cannot be brought in through the barrel of a gun or with a danda, with a stick. It just cannot, because any change, whether for the good or for the bad, any change that you try to bring about by force will have an underground movement against it, an undercurrent against it. So the only way to eradicate social, or to bring about social changes, to eradicate social atrocities, is by cultivating an entire new generation of more tolerant people. And that can only happen through education and sensitization. So it can, there is no way I can call myself an activist, because what do I do? What, like, hold a gun to your head and say, say that you love LGBT and say that? It's not possible. And I always say this, even in my corporate sessions, I know that at the end of this 1 hour, it's not like I can convert you to suddenly now say that I love people from the community or I love the queer community. But if I am able to move the needle from ignorance or hatred to just about even acceptance or tolerance, okay, that itself is a good enough step. Because when you talk to adults come in with a lot of baggage. You come in with the baggage of your upbringing, your own religion, or your own set of beliefs. So I don't expect it to move from hatred to love, but just about hatred to even indifference is all right to begin with. Indifference or a little bit of acceptance or tolerance of the community is what is required. And for the younger generation, start early, start really, really early in school and college. And so bring up a generation which is already sensitized to the issue, which by the time they come into the workforce, for them, LGBT is not even an issue. So most of them will have friends who are out in the open. Most of them will have friends who are trans, and they'll be okay with it, right? So it's all about sensitization, not about activism. There's no cause I'm gunning for at all.
Yeah, the gunning for is literally in somebody who has an army background and say, I'm not gunning for this. Yeah. Having said that, these sort of discussions, what we are talking about just now, these are now happening on social media. These are happening mostly in the urban areas, mostly in people who are conversant with English, who are conversant about laws. How about the same situation in rural areas, where somebody has this sort of an orientation, but he or she wants to come out and finds there is nobody who's talking about me. There is nobody who's talking in my language. Whom do I confide to? What happens if I come out of the closet? What will happen to me? What's your experience in that section?
This was true, and a lot of people in the rural sectors were abandoned and felt abandoned. Even living in the family, they felt abandoned because they had no access to knowing whether there was anybody ever like them. That's where my insistence on IT and saying that IT is going to be a game changer. It's going to be an equalizer. Okay, we do not have to strive for equal opportunities. We have to strive for equitable opportunities, which means a proportional distribution, right? So where there is none, we need to give some more. Where there already is, we need to give less. That's what we need to do. Now, that will only happen in tier 2 and rural areas. IT comes in when the infrastructure comes in. So when there is infrastructure and there is IT, a person sitting in the remote village of, say, Timbuktu, sitting in one corner of the country, may not have anybody around him, her, or them, anybody similar. But through access to the internet, through access to the web, comes to know, okay, there are people like me. What am I? Firstly, people in rural areas don't even know what's happening to them because nobody talks about these things, right? They don't know why when all my friends feel attracted to girls, why do I feel attracted to this other guy? Or vice versa. It could be a lesbian thinking, why does she feel attracted to other women when that's not natural, that's not the correct thing to do. Earlier, they used to be left in the lurch to deal with their own emotions, to deal with their own feelings, and ultimately end up getting married to the person of the opposite sex, have a miserable marriage, and just live their entire lives not even knowing that there are people like them, and there is a name to what they feel. Today, IT has become that equalizer. Today, the internet, all of that is providing absolutely similar opportunities across the board. So anybody can find out who they are or seek help, seek out opportunities. People from the rural areas can move to the cities. Most people from the community move to the cities just to live an open and free life. Just to have a dual life sort of. They live a different life at home, they live a different life here. And most of them, unfortunately, have also been affected by the pandemic when they had to go back home after having lived such open and free lives. When they went back, they faced massive backlash because this was something that nobody had anticipated. So if if you went ahead and, let's say, pierced yourself or tattooed yourself, and that's a permanent mark, right? Going back home with it caused major backlash. So I think that's empowering people from the LGBT community, which is being done through the internet. That's your only vehicle to sort of bring them from their rural setups to cities where they can live freer lives. Educating the rural setup will take a very, very long time. I mean, changing their minds socially would take very, very long. But that can again be brought about by the education system. If it's introduced right at the bottom, it has to percolate down. It will reach the rural areas. But until then, internet is changing the lives of people who are from the community.
Yeah. You spoke about addressing corporates and sensitizing them, and then also many corporates opening up to the possibility of bringing in people from the cure side to their community, to their workforce.
Yes.
How does it feel when, let's say, I, as an employee working in a company, am told that this is a person who's now going to be working with you, he is your partner, or he's or she is going to be in your team, and he or she has this particular preference.
Yes.
And I do not want to work with a person like this. Wouldn't these be very, very common situations?
Yes, these are very common situations, and these do keep happening. There is a certain line that even a corporate needs to draw, wherein the sexuality of a person need not be public knowledge. And the problem that we normally have is when you are asked to work with somebody, the entire identity of the person need not be equated with the word gay, or need not be equated with his or her sexuality. You have a team member who could be a software developer, or whatever designation your team has to have. He, she, or they are first that. Who they sleep with or whom they choose to love is secondary. Right now, for the person to accept this, let's say A in the team, the rest of the team needs to be sensitized enough to accept this person. Okay, and that can only happen once again when the entire team is constantly educated. Again, it's not an overnight thing. It's not, do it once in the month of June kind of a thing, because June is Pride month, so corporates rush to have these kind of talks in the month of June, but then 11 years of the year after that, it's all forgotten. That's not the way it works. Continuously educating your teams on this subject, just to normalize the issue. So the other word for sensitizing is just normalizing. So by sensitizing, I only tell them that, this is what they are, this is whom they choose to love. It has to have no impact on their work or their performance, right? If the other person, and if the company is very serious about their diversity and inclusion agenda, they will think of removing the person who refuses to work, or changing his or her mindset first. If that does not happen, then removing that person, rather than saying that we will not employ a LGBTQ person next time. So the seriousness has to come from top down. How serious are you about incorporating that?
Yeah. And I want to take off from what you said just now, especially that last sentence of yours. We all know that, the unfortunate side effect of the Me Too movement was that many, many small and medium enterprises actually stopped hiring women for the fear of, they're going out and then accusing them of this happening, and let's not even take more women otherwise. So clearly, to prevent yourself from something happening, the unfortunate side effect was, let's not take women, or let's not take them to a very high position where they may accuse their, employers or bosses.
Exactly.
Does something like this happen over here also? I, as a corporate with an X number of employees, may think, no, if I bring in this person and tomorrow he or she accuses this, I don't want to get into all this mess. Let me do what I have been doing. Does this happen?
Yes, this also happens. It happens. I have known cases where a person has lost her job simply because there were too many women in the team, and when they were downsizing, the women were first to let go of. She has filed a case in the court. As always, the decision is still pending, but the fact is that today she is without a job, whereas the company goes on, right, doing what they do. And as and when the judgment comes in, that will happen. But the trauma that the person has to go through for no reason, right? So we talk of empowering women, but we never speak of educating our men or our sons. And again, that boils down right down to the last unit of social interaction, which is family. It all starts there. So there's this whole movement about, oh, I'm going to give my daughter equal rights and equal opportunities, and I'm going to train her in this and that and all of that. Nobody speaks of educating the son in a similar manner. And by educating, I don't mean degrees and that kind of education, but training your son to also believe that his sister or his wife in the future is going to be equal to him. That is not happening. And therefore, unfortunately, in a country like India, situations like these Me Too situations make men scared of interacting with women. What a sad situation, where one half of the population is afraid of interacting with the other half because they feel that they will be pointed fingers at or accused. I mean, it's such a sad situation.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's
So,
what it is.
I mean, really, so you have to weigh, both sides. You have to listen to this also. You have to take into consideration this fact. And it's actually a difficult tightrope to walk, So we can clearly understand why a lot of people from this side of the community do not get the opportunities they deserve. Having said that, this is one question I would like to know. Clearly, this is a sexual or a physical thing where this is my preference.
Right.
Is what I'm going to say right? Is this the right statement? Are people from this community more prone to sexually transmitted diseases, or does this happen, or is this something which people are just imagining and this is not the case?
Yes. Sexually transmitted diseases. The name itself says sexually transmitted. So these diseases are transmitted through unsafe sex, period. That unsafe sex could happen between a man and a woman, a man and a man, okay, or two women. Sexually transmitted diseases are it's a medical condition, okay, and as the name suggests, it happens through sex. Now that sex conducted by which two people, the intercourse is between which two people, is immaterial, right? We all know that AIDS came through us through apes, so there was some amount of bestiality. It was not even about man and woman, but there was contact between man and animal, and that's how we got AIDS. So if that be the case, sexually transmitted diseases has nothing to do with the queer community. Why? I will also tell you why it got connected, and it's a very interesting story. And and heard it from the person who founded the NAS Foundation. NAS Foundation was the first body to appeal against Section 377. So what used to happen is, because of Section 377, it was very difficult for gay people to go and ask openly for condoms, because earlier, if you I'm sure you are aware, in the 70s and 80s, condoms used to be available only in government dispensaries or clinics. They were not openly available over the counter in medical stores, and even if they were available, people were too ashamed to ask for a condom. Which is why this community was the worst impacted with STDs. The other reason is, this community being all under shrouds and under wraps, men had no choice but to avail the services of a male prostitute, of a gigolo. Right? And now obviously a gigolo, being what he is, he could be carrying certain diseases. They had no access to condoms, and therefore automatically these people ended up with STDs, right? And that's how the connection got made. Oh, if you are homo, if you are homosexual, if you are gay, you're sure to have an STD. Not so the case today. Today, when condoms are openly available, there is a lot of knowledge about unsafe sex. This is a myth that needs to be shattered. Sexually transmitted diseases can be transmitted through unsafe sex, and that's it. Who the sex happens between is immaterial.
One last question before I open up to the audience to ask their questions, and there will be some special announcements from Payal too.
Okay.
We all find that in the recent past, in the past few years, with all these laws being repealed and people becoming more aware, people are now coming out of the closet. They are actually going and announcing and giving out to the world their sexual preferences.
Yes.
Do you think the easy availability of porn is directly related to people changing their preferences, or this is something normal which is just supposed to happen?
Right.
Can people be influenced by what they see on their screen, by what they view on their mobiles?
Okay. So let me begin by telling you what is the average age of a person finding out his or her sexuality. Gender, on the other hand, is different. Gender is who you choose to identify as. Children as young as 3 years old are known to have an inclination about their gender as young as 3 years old. So that there is no question of porn there. A child as young as 3 may choose to identify differently from the sex that they were assigned at birth. So a male child may begin to feel like a female as young as 3, and vice versa. They may also grow up then to be gender non-binary. That's different, but they may choose, or they may begin to feel that they do not belong to the sex they are assigned at, right? So that's as young as 3. Sexuality, on the other hand, is whom you are attracted to, whom you are physically or sexually attracted to, who you choose to fall in love with. That could happen as early as at the age of 12 years. Again, over there, porn, not so much of an influence on the determination of your sexuality. Also, the company you keep is also not a determinant on your sexuality. So that's another myth that parents carry. Oh, because I was too open and I let my son interact with other girls, therefore he has become like that. Or vice versa, I should have let my son have a very co-ed upbringing, then he would have been attracted to girls and not just boys. Immaterial, it doesn't work that way. If that were the case, the entire group of boys would turn gay, right? Why? Because so many children go to only girls' school or only boys' schools. Not everybody coming out of a girls' school is a lesbian. Not everybody who comes out of a boys' school is gay. So that is incorrect. And your sexual preference can be determined at any age. So I have known of cases where people have held back from revealing their sexuality and then have gone ahead and revealed it even in their 50s and 60s. Simply because today society is more open, society is more accepting of it, or people talk about it, right? And at that time their parents were alive, or they were forced into a marriage. Once they were forced into a marriage, they were forced to bring up their kids. So a lot of people come out at different ages and stages of their life. It has nothing to do with porn, because again, if I may be as direct as this, porn between a man and a woman may not even appeal to a person who has a different sexuality, right? A gay man will not find that porn interesting. So saying that, porn influenced his thinking, that's incorrect. In fact, because of the way he feels attraction to another man, he may find that sort of porn irrelevant to him, right? So porn is not to blame here. Your sexuality starts developing since your pre-teens or teens, and irrespective of what your exposure to porn is, your sexuality remains what it is. You choose to love whom you choose to love, or you feel attracted to the person you feel attracted to.
Thank you for clarifying a lot of myths which a lot of people may be having. What I would like to do is I would like to open up I would like to open up to the audience for asking questions, and Payal has an announcement to make. Payal, go ahead.
So, namaste and good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank all the audiences to be here on this beautiful afternoon. Thank you, Delshad. You have opened just another window of the section, and looking forward for more association. And Bloom is really looking forward to work for this noble cause. So thank you so much.
Sure, Payal. Thank you.
My dear audiences, we have an announcement. So Bloom is coming up, the upcoming masterclass with our compounding guru, Mr. Deepak Khemani, to know your financial quotient. So this is a 2 days masterclass on Tuesday and Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. For that, tomorrow, Monday, 7:30 p.m., we have a free webinar to know your financial quotient. So you'll know from 1% to 100% what is your financial personal finance, where you stand, at workplace where you stand. So to elevate your money and let it make your money work for you even when you are sleeping. So to know more insights, Mr. Deepak Khemani, our compounding master, will be there tomorrow for a free webinar. So I'll be posting the link. Please join us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Premraj. Well put up, well conceptualized.
Thank you, Payal. So Payal will be sharing the link to join into a free webinar tomorrow. All of you are welcome. It will be fun. It will be learning. You will learn a lot about money, and you will learn a lot about yourself. I would like to open up to the audience to ask any questions to Delshad. Any comment, any question, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
So can I ask the question?
Sure, Dr. Neeta, go ahead.
So Dilshad, thank you for this really outstanding discussion which we had for past 1 hour. And definitely education plays a very, very vital role. But as I very briefly, I work with the community completely with the LGBTQ. And I have been seeing, at times, like this community itself doesn't want to come out of the whole strata. So bringing in a lot of skill development, bringing in a lot of different kind of courses, which we have been doing regularly for past 5 years. But after some time, there is something, which lacks in within the community. Of course, we talk as inclusion, we talk about having equality, we talk about inclusions in all the aspects. But how do you again bring them back to that space key, yes, this is happening for their highest good, if they get into the community of learning, if they get into the community of change, but this doesn't come up from themselves. So how do you tackle this?
Correct. So once again, I would go back to saying education, and let me tell you what I mean by not educating just this community, but gender and sexuality studies for all from the very beginning changes the way in which an entire new generation looks at these people. Today, I agree with what you said, Dr. Neeta, because we may give them opportunities, we may give them skilling up training, but then they have to go and work in the outside world. So their entire thinking, because that's the way they've been viewed all their life, is focused on आप मुझे accept कर रहे हो, ठीक है. Over here in this institution, in this organization, I feel very comfortable. And I'm assuming here that you're talking more in terms of the trans community and not the LGB, because LGB, by the looks of it, nobody even needs to know their sexuality, and they can project themselves in a way where their sexuality is not very out in the open, right?
I am talking about LGB specifically because I am dealing with a lot of sexuality issues of theirs. First is about their own self-acceptance. Secondly, by some chance, they are so open in dancing. They are so open in their body language. They enjoy that creativity. It is a kind of expression, right?
Yes.
And whenever that expression, by any chance, if somebody has taken that photo and put it on the social websites, it becomes a disaster for them. So at times they have even been thrown out of their jobs. At times they have been thrown out of their community from their parents itself. I didn't knew this is who you are. And you have been masking yourself. And now what about the younger generation, the sister who will not get married because of you. But for this community, they become so safe ki it's okay who I am, but they don't want to change for their betterment. So this is where I want to bring in that change. I'm not bothered about the trans because after some time, the trans, they want that thing of being in their own community. Like, it's a comfort zone for them. But when I work with this community is where that skill development matters. This is where, grooming matters. This is where communication matters. So then, but why that change is not happening there? Like maybe I might be missing on some point. That is why I'm asking about it.
Right, sure. So the reason, once again, I feel is the acceptance from the from the parents' side, and like you said, self-acceptance, right? A person who probably approaches you already comes with the burden that society has inculcated on the individual right since the time he or she was a child. A boy is expected to behave in a certain manner, a girl is expected to behave in a certain manner, plus the baggage of the parents, whether it's their religious beliefs, whether it's their social beliefs, community beliefs, or things like these, social responsibility where, because you're the elder son, now the younger sister doesn't get married, or we'll get a bad name in society. So a lot of this pressure stops them from being themselves. I don't think any person from the community doesn't want to live their life authentically. Every single person, every single individual for that matter, wants to live a very authentic life, a life which is very true to himself, herself, or themselves. It is because of the additional baggage that they carry, which is why the question mark comes in. Should I come out? Should I not come out? Which is why I said that a lot of people who come out in their 50s and 60s, long after their parents have passed or their children have grown up and have settled away, they carry all this baggage all through their lives. And it is largely to do with the sensitization of the parents here more than the individual himself or herself. It's the parents and the community which require the sensitization to accept the child as he or she is. There is no harm. I can understand what you're trying to say, where the person may have danced in drag, or the person may have become a drag queen or a drag king, all of that, right? Correct.
Yes.
So I understand that. And that's, so now who needs the sensitization? Not the person. The person is actually living his or her authentic life. The same person, if he had posted a picture of himself skating, or even for that matter joined a dance troupe and dancing over there, the parents may not be aware of that aspect, but they'll be okay. Though we didn't know you were such a good dancer, it might be accepted. But because the person choose to dance in drag, suddenly all the
Yes.
baggage comes in, right? So it's not the people from the community. The people from the community are burdened with all these baggages, which is why they don't want to step out. So the solution would lie in sensitizing and educating the parents, the adults of the house, and not the individual. I don't think he or she needs to undergo even more stress of don't come out. But Dr. Neeta, having said that, coming out is completely a personal decision, a personal call. Even that cannot be forced upon. So even
Absolutely. I
that,
totally
yeah.
respect that. I totally respect that space and boundaries. And I
Correct.
really appreciate when the person himself or herself decides, yes, this is by my choice, which I'm doing it. I
Right.
totally agree this.
Right. So we can't really tell the person कि तुम बोल दो, it doesn't matter,
नहीं,
कुछ
नहीं,
नहीं
नहीं.
होगा वो. Every person knows their comfort zone. Every person knows how much they can push their parents. They know their parents best, and they know the repercussions best. So it's always best to let the person come to terms with it first, and then decide when he or she would like to come out. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Neeta, for asking that question. Anybody else?
So many gay men, even today, get into heterosexual marriages. And after a time, the girls suffer. Earlier it would have happened, but those women would have kept quiet all their lives and been blamed for not having children and all those things. But today, the girls are independent. They know something is wrong and they have to speak out. So, for no fault of their own, they get this label of a divorcee. So, why don't these men at least refrain from getting married? How can we, is there any mechanism where we can discover that or put a stop to that? Because it's very tragic when girls
Good
go
question.
to
Good question, Ashalata. Yeah. Yeah.
So we are unfortunately governed by a very filmy sense of what a gay person is or should look like. We think that we will be able to spot a gay man from a distance, like from 10 kilometers away. I will know because he'll be wearing a pink shirt and yellow pants, or he'll be wearing a green tie. And so these are very these are notions which unfortunately have been thrust upon us, and not even in a serious manner, in a very comical manner. The LGBT community has been looked upon in a very comical manner. So if it's a lesbian, then you would expect her to be very butch and very manly and very macho. And if it's a gay, he's expected to be very effeminate. Those are both incorrect perceptions of people from the community. They could be as normal as
normal, absolutely normal.
Exactly. Which is why it is very difficult to tell. And then again, as I told Dr. Neeta, the onus lies in educating the parents. It is because the parents are not accepting, it's because the society is not accepting. He or she is burdened by the fact that sometimes in certain cases the parents even know that their son is gay and yet insist on getting him married, either because बहन की शादी नहीं होगी, या फिर there's another factor where he's never experienced what it is to be with a woman. So once he gets married, एक बार marital life का बोझ आ जाएगा, वो ठीक हो जाएगा, वो सही हो जाएगा. So we live in these notions thinking that these are very treatable things, these are very curable things, or these are just fads. These are just fancy things. मैंने उसको अमेरिका भेजा था इसलिए वो मेरा बेटा गे हो गया.
Yeah.
So we have to understand that this is something so innate and so natural that it cannot be changed. It cannot be changed overnight, or it cannot be seen from a distance as well. So
Yes.
you can't run a test to see whether the boy or girl is getting married to is gay or not.
Yeah.
It's something the lady unfortunately has to live with. But I would say the courage has to come from the individual. The courage has to come where he puts his foot down and says, no, I'm not getting married. He could give another reason. If he doesn't want to disclose his sexuality, any other reason. But I agree. I agree that the life of the innocent bride is ruined because of that. I wouldn't even say a ruined world is opening up now. I mean, you know, even divorcees have a very good chance at life once again. So
yeah, I think the next level would be that, you know, not even bothering whether the girl is or the boy is a divorcee or not. It's simply somebody who is available in the market, who is available to join in, available to get married, available to getting a partner. Yeah, yeah, very, very well said. So anybody else, please unmute yourself and say whatever you want to. Yes, Amburi, go ahead.
Delshad, I have one question. Sometimes it happens that you try to educate people, but they such suddenly go to a denial and build a wall around themselves, and that wall become so higher. It can be higher than China wall, and it can be thicker than a. It becomes difficult to penetrate that wall and give them a knowledge about what is it and what is. So how to handle this kind of stuff?
So Amburi, let me ask you, are you talking about, in this case, the person himself or herself, or the parent? Are you talking about the parent not coming to terms?
Yeah,
the parents.
Okay. Yes.
Right. Because the individuals largely can be brought around. This sort of dysphoria is what gender dysphoria is, right? Gender dysphoria, or even coming to terms with your own sexuality, that can be rescued through, let's say, counseling, or going to a psychologist and sort of realizing where they stand in terms of their sexuality. But the parents, I agree, there is only so much so far you can go. Beyond that, they are so rigid in their thinking, be it, again, you know, be it a religious bias, social bias, whatever. The only thing I can say in that case is the individual has to first be financially independent. So for any change, if the person has to take a stand, he or she has to be well educated, well financially independent, and then begin to live apart, and only then live authentically. I mean, there are numerous examples of people like that, you know, where they are living dual lives. They live one life as their parents' child, you know, and another that they go and live in another city or another geographical location, so that the parents don't find out. Because otherwise, आप घुट के मर जाओगे. ठीक है? If you continue to live in that same house, you try. There is only a certain limit beyond which you know that your parents are not going to budge, and that the choice would be either between living a suffocating life, or living your true authentic selves a little away from the parents. And that's a very unfortunate situation for a person to come to, but that's the only choice that people are left with, because the parents won't get it, right? So you have to, therefore you have to choose the right moment to come out. My advice to people from the community would be, do not come out as soon as you realize that, you know, you have a certain sexuality, unless you are aware of how your parents or your society around you will take it, because it will lead to a lot of issues. So while you accept it for yourself, educate yourself, make yourself financially independent to step out, and then go tell the world whatever you want, or then you live your authentic self, either in the new place or even come out to your parents. But choose the moment wisely. There have been known cases of girls who have come out to their parents about their sexuality and have been married off, or in some cases in villages, they even kill the girl in the name of honor killing and show it as a suicide, and the entire village supports it. Nobody stands up. Everybody knows it's a murder, but on papers it's shown as a you know, a suicide. Everybody knows it's an honor killing, but nobody comes out in the open and talks about it. So that's the sad state. So choose wisely when you choose to come out.
Yeah. Well, what can be said is, you know, these places, these states where this honor killing is happening, are those states which have that skewed sex ratio. For every 1,000 men, they find that there are only 700 women, instead of, you know, having at least 900, 950 plus. So clearly they will suffer the consequences, but what goes around comes around. We all know that, but it is very difficult for that person who's suffering to be able to explain to him or her as to what is going on. Well said, Dilshad. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we've had almost 100 minutes talk with Dilshad, who has beautifully, really beautifully explained what she is doing, how she is doing her sensitization bit. Every question was, answered with a smile. She always has the smile on her face. So thank you, Dilshad, for what you are doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
All the best in what you do. Hopefully, we will become a society where we will all begin to not only forgive, but understand and coexist. Just like Bloom, which collaborates and coexists, would like to have a team with everybody. Premraj, over to you for the final closing.
Dilshad, thank you for giving us a bird's eye view into a very different class of society. The work you're doing is appreciated as you are rendering human service to a set of marginalized people. As your title suggests, you are a catalyst in the true sense of the word. Wishing you continued success in this thankless crusade.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Would also like to thank the participants for staying till the end. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Payal. Thank you, Premrajji. Thank you, Deepakji. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Ambri. Thanks for coming.